Just shambolic.
Hello, good evening or good morning, and welcome to the Cricket Nerds. We are filming a podcast today to preview the semi-finals of the 2020 World Cup. And given the teams that are in there and the manner in which they've got there, it proves to be an awesome prospect for the final. And also, what we're going to think about is who we think is going to win out of these four teams. So let's just get into it. Firstly, we've got tomorrow's game, and tomorrow's game is New Zealand versus Pakistan. Now, New Zealand, they've been pretty comfortable in terms of getting to the semi-final, whereas Pakistan's had a few ups and downs along the way and have managed to scrape through by the barest of margins. So should we start off thinking about New Zealand first? James, what are your thoughts on New Zealand's path to the semi-final so far?
It's been pretty smooth sailing, to be completely honest. They've looked very strong. They had that amazing start against Australia. So for me, this game looks a lot like, I don't know, just plain Walls vanilla versus like Raspberry Ripple with sprinkles and bubblegum. Like there's the boring option, but they're very good, which is New Zealand. And then there's Pakistan, which they're wild, but they'll also make you vomit. And yeah, so I think so far New Zealand have looked the strongest side, potentially other than South Africa, who I still don't know how they managed to get out of that competition. They had an early flight home. I'm sure they booked it before, and they just contrived a way to somehow lose. How are Pakistan in the final or semi-final? How happened?
I'm baffled how they ended up there because, like, I don't know. They just haven't had a World Cup that they'd have been proud of, I think. And it was really, the absolute bottle job that South Africa did at the end there. I think it was the loss to Zimbabwe really, like, in my head, it wrote Pakistan off as a contender. But then, they've come back in and it's been phenomenal so far. There are definitely some players to watch from each team. From a New Zealand perspective, definitely the likes of Devon Conway and Glenn Phillips are their two, main key to success. They've been the ones that have consistently been performing. But that means it's about time for Kane Williamson to come in and put a performance in. Who do you think is the key to New Zealand winning, boys?
I think Kane Williamson runs at the top of the order is key because that captain knock will kind of help them out. And he's had one good innings where he actually scored quite quickly for Kane Williamson. And I think they'll need that from him because if it's in Sydney, and so far I think it's been bat first really in Sydney in order to win. And I think runs on the board will be key, and Kane Williamson can provide that. However, New Zealand's bowling is something which has always been a standout. You think of Trent Bolt and Tim Southee opening the bowling for New Zealand. They are, for me, the real key in terms of them getting so far and potentially progressing through to the final. Because I think if New Zealand put up a below par score, they have the bowling attack to kind of limit Pakistan. James, then to you, who would you say are the keys for Pakistan going into this game?
I mean, you can't look past Babar and Rizwan because they have not fired at all in this World Cup. And for those two to fire in a match, that could mean the complete difference. And I think Pakistan could go, red hot or ice cold in this game. They could either absolutely blitz it, get 230 with no wickets lost and bundle New Zealand out for 50, or it could be the complete reverse. I think Babar and Rizwan make quite a big impact, obviously. But there are some interesting comparisons to make within Pakistan and New Zealand in terms of their middle orders have got they've got one player in really good form. So we look at Glenn Phillips on one side and we look at Iftikhar Ahmed on the other. Glenn Phillips, you would say, is in better form. He's looking like the more dangerous player, but Iftikhar Ahmed's been amazing. They've got some very good spinners, spinning all-rounders. Look at Mitch Santner's actually really impressed me as an all-rounder.
Yeah.
I would say the 7 feels a bit high for him usually, but he seems to be doing okay in it. And Shadab Khan.
Shadab Khan, yeah.
He is class. And we said it ages ago, but he's really good and he's very exciting. And then both the bowling attacks, you know, that the left arm incredibly skilled of Shaheen Shah Afridi, who bowled like an absolute god the other day, and compare that with Trent Bolt. And then right arm, very good, Tim Southey and Haris Rauf. But they've also got Naseem Shah. They've got tons of good players. Both the bowling attacks are very good. So I think the difference is on the batting form.
Do you think that Shaheen Shah Afridi is the sort of player who could upset New Zealand at the start of their innings?
Without a doubt. Because we've seen what power play bowling's done so far. Is the worst position to bat this tournament has been opener, because in the power play it's been doing tons, and Shaheen Shah Afridi is so skilled that in those first few overs he could really put a dent in. What do you think, Bench?
Through the whole tournament for both of these teams, just to echo what you've said, we've seen cameos at the top of the order, but it's been the middle order who've been scoring the runs, which is backwards to everything that we said coming into this World Cup for Pakistan. They were relying so heavily on their 2 openers. In the same way that for New Zealand, the games that they've won are the games that Devon Conway's looked fantastic, the games that Finn Allen has smashed the Aussies to all parts of the ground. But both of the teams have been backed up by their lower middle order. You think of Glenn Phillips's 62. You think of Glenn Phillips's ton, was it that he hit? It was something. It was phenomenal hitting. And then for both of the sides, you've got the Jimmy Neesham for New Zealand. You've got the Shadab Khan for New Zealand, for Pakistan, to come in and do that finisher role, that let's try and strike it way over 150, let's try and hit 200 if we can, and just hit it cleanly. And I think they're the real key matchups that we'll see coming into this. As you say, they've both got a phenomenal pace bowling attack. I think where another key matchup in this is going to be in the spin bowling, because Pakistan have a more complete spin attack, in my opinion. Like, they have Mohammad Nawaz, they've got Shaheen Shadab Khan, and if needed, they've got Iftikhar Ahmed. They've got people that they can take overs from. Whereas when you really look at the New Zealand team, you've got Ish Sodhi and Santner if he plays. They've not used Bracewell very much. So for me, for New Zealand, Ish Sodhi is going to be an absolute key if they're going to win. As we've said, both their pace attacks are equally skilled. It's going to come down to, I think, the top order and the spin bowlers.
Yeah, spin at Sydney, especially in the second innings, is definitely a key. And I think one part of your point when you were saying it, Benj, something that came to mind is that classic us underestimating a New Zealand player in Ish Sodhi, who he's performed really well throughout the whole tournament, hasn't he, with the ball. So they've got a very good spin lineup, New Zealand, in Santner and Sodhi. And yeah, it's easy to say, well, Pakistan's is better because it's Pakistan, whereas New Zealand, they fly under the radar. But I think they have been doing this a very good job for them.
I just to finish off on this, I just want to call out one player that we haven't actually mentioned, and I think that's Haris Rauf. I think, as you've said, James, you were talking about that spin attack and that spearheading that attack. We've said a lot about Shaheen Shah Afridi and Naseem Shah with that left arm, but I think Haris Rauf, that true pace that he's got, Haris Rauf versus Devon Conway, I think that's going to be the deciding factor in this match at the top of those innings.
Before we move on to talk about the main event, one thing I did want to talk about is a positive, which is the fact they've got reserve days for the semi-finals and the final, because we have seen this World Cup that a good proportion of the games have been rain affected, and it's not been played in England, which is ridiculous. And so they've got those reserve days available for them to play for the semi-finals and final, which I think is awesome, just in case the weather takes a turn for the worst.
Yeah,
Okay, so
definitely.
let's go on to England versus India, the second semi-final, which is happening on Thursday, and a bit of an interesting thing in terms of the team selection, because England don't have David Milan through injury in the last game against Sri Lanka. What do we think? I'd like to get both of your boys' opinion on this. What do we think is the best replacement? Do they go with that batting heavy lineup and replace David Milan with Phil Salt, or do they introduce another bowling option? What's your thoughts?
What we'll see is Ben Stokes jump up to that number 3 spot. I think that's where he'll sit. So it does really open that option up. I don't think Phil Salt is the replacement because I don't know where he fits in that lineup. Because you've got Hales and Butler to open up. Realistically, Salt would come in to replace one of them. So my money is on potentially Chris Jordan. And if they wanted to go a bit more batter heavy, a David Willey. I don't think we'll see Phil Salt because he'd be batting at number 4. He'd be out of position. I don't know what you think about this, James.
Yeah, I it's an awkward situation that England have found themselves in because I think Ben Stokes plays best at 3. And that's it's been a known thing. Just David Milan's been really good at 3. And on merit, you just can't kick him out of the side. My instinct would be to just do a straight swap. David Milan, Phil Salt in at 3. He can go from ball 1. And he's a very, very talented batsman that's been in good form recently. So that would be my instinct. However, I definitely do see the argument where pushing Ben Stokes up to 3 gives you the best Ben Stokes possible, a Ben Stokes that can really measure his innings, can decide how he needs to play, and can guide England through. And then you've got some brilliant players still in. You've still got, was it Chris Wokes at 8 still? So it'd be Hales, Butler, Stokes, Brooke, Livingston, Ali, Curran, Wokes, Wood, Rashid. I can't remember the other person.
That's everyone. I would actually go with Benji's option, which is to have David Willey in. And my reason behind that is because Willey is the sort of player who will bowl in the power play. He won't bowl at all in the rest of the game. Whereas if they played Chris Jordan, they're going to bowl Chris Jordan. And chances are, given the recent history, Jordan will go for a lot of runs unnecessarily, especially against Suryakumar Yadav, who doesn't matter if you're bowling Yorkers, he's going to tonk it for 6. Whereas David Willey in the power play provides that extra option and means that Mark Wood doesn't have to bowl in the power play. And we've seen him leak runs in the power play. So I feel like David Willey will be that better fit come into the side and provide that extra batting option. Because let's be honest, David Milan hasn't really done much with the bat in this tournament. I don't think his best innings has been like 35 and it was less than the run of the ball. So we're not actually going to miss much, I don't think, by playing the bowler/batter option. But yeah. But looking at Team India, I'm guessing we're assuming they'll be unchanged.
Well, there's a bit of worry at the minute for India because I don't know if you've seen, but Rohit Sharma has been injured in the nets.
Oh, I
don't think that's a serious injury though.
It's an injury scare. He was struck in the forearm by a throwdown, but came back to bat. But it's just something that's like hovering around. It sounds like he'll play, but it's a little bit of a scare, isn't it? When your captain, one of your spearhead players, does take a nasty blow like that. So yeah, he had to ice his arm for a bit, but yeah, it looks like Rohit should play, but it's just one of those things that, is Rohit gonna take it a bit easier in training, for example? Like, there's just so many things like that. To your other point, which unchanged team are you thinking? The team with Rishabh Pant in for Dinesh Karthik or their original 11?
Yeah, I think Rishabh Pant for Dinesh Karthik. And a lot of the comments from our Indian supporters in the last video were to do with picking Pant over Kartik. I know some people thought Kartik, but the majority was saying, well, Pant has that left hand option, and to get that left hand right hand combination, which is quite crucial. And I don't know. I feel like against England's bowlers, Rishabh Pant is more likely to take a liking to and play better against someone like Anadil Rashid, whereas Dinesh Karthik isn't as good against spin as Rishabh Pant. So I can see them playing Rishabh Pant ahead of Dinesh Karthik.
Yeah, and I think when I think about what both of them do, Dinesh Karthik tends to be more of a play it down the ground for six kind of player. I mean, he'll hit it everywhere, and he's very good. And I don't think they've got a bad option there. On keeping merit, I'm going to put them pretty much equally. I haven't seen DK make a mistake yet in this competition, and Rishabh Pant likewise is a very talented keeper. But Rishabh Pant, he tends to play a lot square of the wicket. Like he'll do a lot of sweeps, slogs, and a bit like Surya Kumar Yadav as well. Just played those unorthodox shots that can go square, but for six. And they're playing Adelaide, which is very long boundaries, which are straight, but the square boundaries are very short. So players like Surya Kumar Yadav and Rishabh Pant, who use those square boundaries quite a lot, they could be very, very good for India. And that's a scary thing for England. How on earth do they get someone like Surya Kumar Yadav out?
Search me. No one seems to have figured that out all tournament, have they? Like that's one of the big problems that faces England. I think for sure it's how to get Sky out. I mean, look, he's not scored a 50 in every game that he's played. That's one positive. So
I guess the issue is the fact that it doesn't matter where you bowl to him, because he's so unorthodox. When you bowl short, he'll do something weird and get it for six. So I don't think that's the tactic. I think when you bowl it full, he's able to hit the Yorkers. He's also very good against spin. It's like, where is the weakness there?
I genuinely think the tactic for England is going to have to just be try to contain him as much as possible, limit his scoring options, which is difficult to do with only 5 fielders allowed to be on the boundary for Surya Kumar Yadav. Limit his scoring options and then just score more runs than them. Like just hit the ball as hard as you can. That's going to be the only way that England can do it. They're just going to have to beat them.
But you can imagine.
I do think that Sam Curran can be a point of difference, because he's shown that he is the informed T20 bowler at the moment in the world, and he's unpredictable as well. So Surya Kumar Yadav seems to have this ability to just know where the bowler's going to bowl. What was his name? Lukem Jongwei. He was bowling like these really wide left arm across the batsman Yorkers that Surya Kumar Yadav was stepping across and hitting over square leg. And it was the most bizarre shots. And he was playing these ridiculous sweeps and scoops and all that sort of stuff. And it was like he knew where he was going to bowl already. Sam Curran has shown that despite being, some would say relatively not that quick and also not very tall, so he hasn't got many points of difference there. It's very hard to pick when he's going to bowl a Yorker or when he's going to bowl that short ball. And I think that could be the point of difference. I reckon, prediction right here, PD, take notes. Surya Kumar Yadav is going out to a ball from Sam Curran.
Oh,
after he scored 50 runs.
Yeah.
So
I think England will definitely have their plans for Sky. It's a given because of how destructive he's been in cricket over the last few months. And he's one of the only players who has brought form into this tournament. Anyone else who's come into this tournament in form has done terribly. But Sky seems to be different in that aspect. However, given that, England will have plans for Sky, but they've also got to contend with KL Rahul, who has been scoring well at the top of the order for India, and Virat Kohli, who is refining form. And then after Sky, they've also got Hardik Pandya, who has been one of the best all-rounders in 2020 cricket for the last year. and then Rishabh Pant potentially to finish that off. So it's probably
And
the
then
best
Axar
batting
Patel,
lineup giving.
and then Ravi Ashwin.
Yeah, true.
You can both bat.
Do you want to hear some stats?
Of course.
Yeah.
So Suryakumar has been out 3 times this World Cup. 2 of those are unforced errors, and the last is a bit of
His
pace.
left arm spin that we don't have.
Yeah. So,
Brilliant.
yeah, it's not looking great. It's going to be just try to limit him, keep him at a strike rate of under 4,000, I think is going to be the main thing. But the trouble is, if someone like Suryakumar doesn't, I butchered that name. If somebody like Sky doesn't fire, Kohli will, or Pant will, or Rohit will. Like, it's just one of those things that's going to happen. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm nervous about it. What are England's keys to victory aside from getting rid of Suryakumar Yadav?
I think big first innings runs, or someone standing up and making a really solid 60 or 70 off like 40 balls. I think that is the key. When you see teams win, it's through that. And I think someone like Jos Buttler, India will be having the same headaches about Jos Buttler as they have about Sky, because he's the best 2020 batsman in the world. One of them. Similar to Alex Hales, who's been very good at the top of the order recently. So they'll have their own headaches. And I think someone like that, like a Buttler, a Stokes, or a Hales, needs to have that big innings to almost just walk away with the victory. I think this is the time for England to play that 2020 match that we're waiting for them to play. They haven't yet done that this tournament. They haven't really put themselves forward in the batting, and I think that is the key for them.
So England need to score 230 runs to win. Is that
280? Come on, let's.
This is Suryakumar Yadav we're going against.
Yeah.
280.
We're going up a simple 14 and over.
Yes. So
Right.
before we get, were you going to say cricket nose questions?
I was going to say cricket.
Great minds think alike, don't they?
So we have cricket nerds questions, and this time they're not necessarily from PD. So thank you very much to those people that have sent them in. You know what? The first cricket nerds question I'm going to read out isn't properly one, but it's a nice comment anyway. It's from Nitin Mishra, who said, "Bro, why are your videos not getting much views? There is a problem from YouTube side." Yes, Nitin, it must be. Thank you very much for that. So the first actual cricket nerds question we've got is from Shobin Gupta, and he says, does New Zealand have the right batting lineup to upset Pakistan's bowling, or is the bowling just too good for any other team in this tournament? Also, your predictions for the semis.
Should we save the predictions for the end after we've done cricket nose question?
Yeah.
Sure.
Does New Zealand have the right batting lineup? I would say yes. I think Pakistan's bowling is very good, but I think that New Zealand have shown form in their batting better than any other team so far in this tournament, other than maybe India. So I think New Zealand do have the batting to withstand the Pakistan attack.
I'm agreeing with that wholeheartedly. And just as I say this, New Zealand are going to get bundled out for 20 tomorrow. But that's just the power of the Pakistan lineup. That, you know, I fully think that New Zealand have a batting lineup to contend with it. And in that same breath, I think Pakistan could very easily walk this game. Next question, and I'm going to direct this one to Benji specifically. In the IPL, since the inception of the T20 World Cup, Pakistan, a team who has no players in the IPL, has reached more semis than any other team. Wonder why that is, he says with a wry smile. This was Faizan Khan as well. Thank you, Faizan. He said, wonder why that is. Maybe because the other teams don't get to see Pakistan players as much, so it keeps them a mystery. What do you think? Because I think there are a lot of international players that play the PSL, aren't there?
Yeah, I'm not sure about this. I think this comes from a perspective that IPL's the only T20 franchise competition in the whole world, because no Indian player plays in any tournament that's not IPL. So only the players who have to be the best in the world to get into the IPL see Indian players in action face to face. So it's only your top tier players that do that. I would say there's far more players from Pakistan, from Australia, who play in the other T20 tournaments around the world. Thinking of the BBL, the PSL, the Dubai, the UAE one that they have, or even the T10. I think that it's the opposite way around, really, and I don't know the reason why that is. Pakistan is a very good cricketing nation, aren't they? They've always been able to put out a good side, and they've always been a little bit overshadowed, I'd say, for the risk of being called out, by the likes of India and Australia, and haven't performed. They're always a little bit of an underdog when they go into a tournament, I'd say, at least in sort of the last 10, 20 years.
Which is strange, because they've had actually a very good run of results in 2020 cricket.
Yeah, for sure. Like, if you go back to sort of and I know this is predates T20, but the Shoaib Akhtar and the Wasim Akram days, like where they were the most fearsome team in the whole world, they have had ebbs and flows, but they just do create fantastic cricketers. And I think things like the PSL, things like the Big Bash, like, you see more Pakistani players there than you do the likes of the Indian players, especially. But that's just because of the way that the ICC, the BC, the Indian Cricket Board, have their contracts with their players, that the only overseas cricket they can play is the County Championship. Yeah. So, yeah.
Okay, I think that's everything for Cricket Nurse questions. So let's end this video with our predictions. This is what everyone's come for. Who is going to win all of the semi-finals and then the final? So, James, Pakistan versus New Zealand. The winner is going to be
New Zealand.
Ooh. I'm going to say Pakistan for that one.
New Zealand.
Oh, so either I'm going to be very happy or very sad, one or the other. And then the last one is England versus India. Now, there's always a bit of bias because we're English supporters. So I'm going to say England.
I'm going to say India. I genuinely think India will, like, I just think, it's a case of 51-49%, but I'm going to say India edge it.
England.
Nice.
I think my prediction is, and it's going to really hurt James, but Arshdeep is going to absolutely bottle a death over and get smoked by Moeen.
Oh, wow. That is a big prediction.
I mean, I'm not going to mind because I'm an England fan, but
I reckon
don't do that to my boy Arshdeep. Do it to me.
I reckon it's going to be a very good game of cricket. And everyone's hyping it up, which means it's obviously not going to be a good game of cricket. But I think everyone's thinking they're the two best teams in white ball cricket currently, and to see them go head to head will be great to watch. I think it's also interesting that England are missing their main man in Johnny Bairstow, and India are missing their main man in Jasprit Bumrah, because that would have been a contest I'd love to watch. So maybe they can do their own little YouTube video and post it for everyone to see, and that will get more views than most of our podcasts. But there we go. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Please make sure you subscribe and like to this video, because it really does help us out. Make sure you leave your comments, your Cricket Nerds questions. We love to answer them. We want to get to the point where we have so many Cricket Nerds questions that we can't answer all of them in a video. So please get us to that stage. Make sure you listen to us also on any podcast sites that you use, and also follow us on social media. The link tree is in the description for you to have a look at. And I think that's everything. So have a good rest of your day and enjoy the cricket.